I've never known a silence as loud as New York City's at midnight. The streets are never truly still, of course. Taxis zip by, horns echo in the distance, and you can almost feel the subway rumbling far beneath the pavement. But in certain corners of the city, amid the glow of tired street lamps, there's a hush that drapes itself over the endless clamor. If you're paying attention, really paying attention, you can feel that hush in your bones, like a whispered warning that you've stepped outside the familiar boundaries of everyday life. That's exactly how it felt the night I met Lauren. My name is Olivia, and I like to say I live and breathe New York at all hours. By day, I'm a graphic designer in a cramped but lively midtown studio. My walls are plastered with half-finished designs and random clippings from magazines that inspire me, a swirl of color that defines my world. At night, though, I become something else entirely. I haunt rooftop bars with glaring neon signs, lose myself in the pounding bass of underground clubs, and slip into hidden cocktail lounges where the air smells of expensive perfume and secrets best left unspoken. You could say I live in search of experiences, shimmering moments that I can tuck away like stolen gems. I've never been the type to stay in one place for too long, or to tie myself to a single person. Commitment to me was like wearing a sweater 3 sizes too small. It always felt suffocating, and I'd wriggle free at the first sign of restriction. But then came Lauren. I saw her across the room at the Jane Hotel, a sophisticated bar known for its live jazz that gives the whole place a dreamy, cinematic feel. When I walked in that evening, the saxophone's mellow tune danced around us, and the murmured chatter of the crowd served as a comfortable backdrop. It was the kind of environment where you could lean forward to whisper in someone's ear just to be heard, which always felt intimate no matter the conversation. Lauren stood by the bar, wearing a tight black dress that hugged her figure like it was custom-made. Her hair, rich, dark waves, cascaded across her shoulders, and her gaze caught me completely off guard. She seemed amused by something, though I couldn't tell what. Maybe she was laughing at the crowd, or maybe she was laughing at me, gawking at her like an idiot from across the room. I can't say I was the only one looking at her. She radiated a magnetic energy that practically commanded attention, but she locked onto my gaze with a teasing lift of her eyebrow, raising her Negroni glass in a silent toast. I felt the warmth of a blush creeping up my neck. Usually, I'm the kind of person who doesn't shy away from making the first move, yet there was something about her that made my heart flutter. It wasn't just her confidence, it was the way she seemed to size me up immediately, as though she knew exactly who I was in a single glance. I was still debating whether to approach her when she suddenly sidled over, leaning against the bar beside me, close enough that I could smell her faint perfume, something floral with a spicy undertone. "You always stare at strangers this way?" she asked. "Or am I just special?" Her voice was richer than the jazz playing in the background. I found myself smiling, despite my best attempt at playing it cool. "You looked like someone worth staring at," I replied, forcing some confidence into my tone. In truth, my stomach was doing somersaults. She chuckled softly. "I guess that means I have to buy you a drink." That was how it began, with a sharp-witted line, a daring smile, and that sultry, dizzying sense that I was stepping off the ledge of an ordinary life. We spent the next hour talking, trading half-truths and flirty banter, letting the hush of the bar wrap around us. It felt so easy and yet so charged, like a secret I wasn't sure I was ready to share. By the time she reached for my hand and tugged me out of the bar into the humid Manhattan night, I was breathless with anticipation, as if I'd just hopped onto a roller coaster ride. I had no idea how wild that ride would be. Outside the Jane Hotel, the summer night draped the city in a warm cloak, heavy with humidity and the possibility of impending rain. The streetlights painted the sidewalks in a dim, golden glow. Taxis roared by, headlights slicing through the darkness, illuminating momentary snapshots of passers-by, couples laughing, friends leaning on each other for support, the occasional straggler stumbling out of a late-night shift. Lauren walked a few paces ahead of me, her high heels striking the pavement with measured confidence, like she was used to the city making way for her. I followed, my heart pounding in my chest, an unfamiliar sense of exhilaration coursing through me. Normally, I took the lead, but something about Lauren compelled me to trail behind, as though I was tethered to her by some invisible thread. Finally, she glanced over her shoulder, shooting me a cool, enigmatic smile. "You trust me?" she asked, as if we were just discussing the weather. I let out a nervous laugh. "I don't make it a habit to trust people I've just met." She shrugged, turning back around and continuing forward. "Tonight might be your exception." We snaked through streets and alleys until we reached a building in Soho, unassuming from the outside. a classic cast-iron facade that blended seamlessly with the row of storefronts. By that point, I was buzzing with an odd combination of curiosity and mild anxiety. Lauren slipped a key out of her purse, silvery in the street lamp's glow, and unlocked the door without hesitation. Inside lay a loft that hit me with an immediate sense of modern chic. Brick walls, polished concrete floors, high ceilings with exposed beams, tasteful, open, and distinctly Lauren. I half expected to see a line of designer shoes by the door, or a curated set of abstract paintings on the walls. But the space was surprisingly minimalist, devoid of any personal touches that might reveal her story. Everything was neat, almost too neat. She let the door close behind us with a resonating click, then slid the deadbolt into place. That metallic snick sounded louder than it should have, echoing in the hush that fell between us. I felt a rush of adrenaline, like I'd just agreed to something far more intense than I'd signed up for. "So," I began, my voice a touch unsteady. "Now what?" Lauren approached me in slow, deliberate steps. Her gaze locked on mine, a mischievous glimmer in her eyes. The tension in the air thickened until it was almost tangible, a physical presence pressing in on my lungs. "Now," she murmured, reaching out to trace the line of my jaw with the tip of her finger. "I finally get to see if you're as dangerous as you look." I swallowed hard, pulse hammering in my ears. This was the kind of bold, brazen confidence that I usually wore like armor. But with Lauren, I felt disarmed. It was thrilling and terrifying to sense that the power dynamic was not entirely in my hands. Then she leaned in, her lips meeting mine in a sudden kiss that sent sparks of heat dancing along my skin. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was a collision of pent-up desire, the kind that forces you to either surrender or run. I chose to surrender, tangling my fingers in her hair, savoring the taste of her breath. We were in our own private universe, cut off from the city that roared outside. And for a few moments, I let myself forget the rest of the world existed, until the silence caught up with us. She pulled away abruptly, eyes wide. "Wait, did you hear that?" I blinked, still reeling from the intensity of her kiss. Hear what? That's when it hit me. The complete absence of noise. Even in the quietest parts of Manhattan, the city was never truly silent. Cars, sirens, distant music. There was always some sign of life. But here, in this loft, at that moment, it felt like we were sealed away from reality. Lauren strode across the living room to the window, peering through the thin curtain, her expression darkened. "Damn it," she muttered under her breath. I moved behind her, following her gaze. Outside, a black car sat parked at the curb across the street, headlights off, almost invisible in the murky glow of the street lamps. A chill skittered down my spine. "Are you expecting someone?" I asked softly, a flutter of unease expanding in my chest. She released the curtain, her lips set in a grim line. "No." She pulled out her phone, tapping the screen with trembling fingers. "We need to get out of here, now." The words sliced through the tension like a knife. In an instant, the loft transformed from a tempting haven into a trap. Confusion flooded me. "What's going on?" Lauren shook her head, yanking open a closet door and rifling through it. "I'll explain later. Come on." And that was the first clue that the woman who had set my senses ablaze was playing a deeper, more dangerous game than I'd ever encountered. She grabbed my hand, dragging me into a spacious bedroom with a minimalist vibe. Just a bed, a single dresser, and a closet. Nothing about the place suggested a personal history. No photos, no sentimental trinkets. In the half-light, everything felt more ominous. From the dresser, Lauren pulled out a thick envelope and stuffed it into my tote bag before I could protest. I felt the weight of it. Vaguely rectangular shapes inside. Papers, documents, maybe even something else I couldn't identify. My stomach lurched. "What the hell is this?" I demanded. She paused, just long enough for me to see real fear behind her steely composure. "I brought you here because I thought I could trust you," she said. "But we don't have time to talk about it. You need to go." "Go?" I echoed, adrenaline surging. "You drag me across town, kiss me, then tell me to leave with—" I gestured to the envelope. "Whatever the hell this is." She bit her lip, hesitation flickering across her face. "Olivia, please, it's too dangerous for you here. If you're not involved, you might still have a chance." "I don't run from danger," I snapped. "I want answers." Behind us, the loft seemed to shrink, the walls closing in under the weight of whatever was happening outside. Lauren gave me a conflicted glance, torn between her impulse to protect me and whatever plan she'd been orchestrating before I walked into her life. "Fine," she said at last, "but keep that envelope with you, no matter what." Before I could push for more details, her phone buzzed. She read the screen, color draining from her cheeks. "They're coming." Her words were barely audible, but the dread they carried was deafening. She seized my hand again and pulled me down the hallway, heading for the back of the apartment. My heart hammered in my chest, and the reflection in the windows as we ran showed the wild panic in my eyes. The hush outside had become suffocating, pressing against the glass like an omen, but then something snapped into place. A metal clang, followed by the creak of the front door. My muscles tensed. Someone, uninvited, had just let themselves in. "Get down," Lauren hissed. We slipped into the bathroom and closed the door, plunging ourselves into darkness. The faint overhead light of the corridor filtered through the crack beneath the door, casting a thin line of illumination across the tiled floor. In that tight space, the smell of lavender soap clung to the air. My nerves felt like exposed wires, twitching at every sound. Lauren pressed a trembling finger to her lips, urging me to stay silent. Footsteps, soft, measured, echoed through the loft. They moved slowly, like whoever was out there had all the time in the world. The hair on the back of my neck prickled at each step, sweat beading along my temples. My mind raced. Who were they? Why were they after Lauren? And why, of all people, had she chosen me to help? Lauren's grip on my hand tightened. I heard faint murmurs, possibly someone speaking in hushed tones, but it was impossible to make out words. I closed my eyes, trying to still my ragged breathing. If they heard even the slightest sound, this hiding spot would become a trap. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The footsteps drew closer, pausing near the bathroom door. A shadow shifted beneath the thin light creeping under the door, and my pulse thundered so loudly I was sure the intruders could hear it. Suddenly, a handle rattled, and the bathroom door jerked slightly. My heart leapt into my throat. I braced myself, every muscle clenched, imagining the door being flung open and a stranger's face appearing with something menacing in hand. But then, a cell phone rang, cutting through the tension with shrill insistence. The footsteps retreated abruptly, heading back through the loft. We heard the front door open once more. Then, after a few long moments, it slammed shut, leaving us alone in suffocating silence again. Neither Lauren nor I moved for what felt like a full minute. Finally, she exhaled, leaning her forehead against the bathroom wall. "That was too close." I nodded, my throat dry. "Are we safe?" She shook her head. "Not here." We emerged from the bathroom into a loft that now felt hostile and alien. The intruders were gone, but the echo of their presence hung in the air like a stain. Lauren spun on her heel, her voice urgent. "We have to leave, Olivia." I stared at the battered front door, the handle scratched where someone had forced an entry. My heart still pounded, but I forced myself to speak calmly. "What's in this envelope, Lauren? Why did they break in here? Who are you running from?" Her eyes flickered with desperation. "You've seen enough to realize that this is bigger than you or me. These people, whoever they are, think I have something that belongs to them. You're carrying it now." She pointed to my tote bag. "It's not safe for you to stay." A swirl of disbelief and defiance surged inside me. Just hours ago, I had been sipping cocktails and flirting with a captivating stranger, imagining a night of heat and possibility. Now I was caught in a clandestine struggle I barely understood. My instincts warred with each other. Part of me screamed to flee, to drop the envelope and never look back. Another part, emboldened by the adrenaline coursing through my veins, refused to abandon Lauren. She was dangerously compelling, someone who had sparked a desire in me that went far beyond physical attraction. "I'm not leaving you," I said, my voice steady despite the terror swirling in my gut. Lauren searched my face, something tender flickering in her gaze. "You don't understand how deep this goes." "Then explain," I pressed. "Tell me what I'm risking here." She hesitated for a heartbeat, chewing on her lower lip. "There are certain organizations that have business in the city, dealing in information, money, documents. I came into possession of something they lost, and they want it back." A million questions threatened to spill from my mouth, but I only managed one. "Are you some kind of thief?" Her lips curved in a humorless smile. "Not exactly. Let's just say I help people recover things that were stolen from them. But sometimes those items end up being more complicated than I originally thought." I clenched the tote bag close, swallowing the lump in my throat. "So this envelope is proof of something big." Lauren nodded, her shoulders tense. "You have no idea. It could get me killed." I exhaled sharply, 1,000 thoughts whirring through my mind. I knew I should turn and run. I barely knew this woman, and she had lied, or at least concealed huge chunks of truth about who she was. Yet, despite the fear, I couldn't shake the lure of her intensity, the glimmer of vulnerability behind her confident facade. Then let's figure out a plan, I said at last, surprising even myself. She squared her shoulders, nodding. We need to get out of here first. Then I'll give you whatever explanation I can. With that, she grabbed a small duffel bag from her closet, stuffed in a few necessities, clean clothes, a phone charger, a sheaf of papers, and we slipped out the back door, descending 2 flights of stairs until we emerged into an alley thick with the stench of garbage and wet pavement. I half expected to see that black car creeping at the mouth of the alley, but all was quiet. Lauren clutched my hand. Keep your head down and move quickly. We stepped onto the sidewalk, trying to appear casual despite the adrenaline radiating through our bodies. Taxi headlights swept past us, and throngs of people in stylish clothes flitted between late-night spots, their laughter punctuating the night. In Manhattan, you can hide in a crowd, vanish behind the city's frenetic energy, if you know how. After a brisk walk, we ducked into the nearest subway station. Once on the train, we collapsed onto plastic seats, the overhead lights flickering. I kept one hand on my tote bag, the envelope inside feeling like it weighed a ton. Lauren sat beside me, tapping her foot anxiously, the tension in her posture unrelenting. You okay? I asked softly, though the question felt absurd given the circumstances. She nodded, but her eyes darted around the car, scanning for threats. Just trying to figure out our next step. I reached out and placed my hand over hers. For a moment, she squeezed my fingers in silent gratitude. The contact sent a jolt of warmth through me. In that single gesture, we acknowledged the surreal nature of our situation and the strange bond forming between us. We ended up at a no-frills motel in Queens, one of those places you only check into if you're trying to disappear for the night. The lobby smelled of stale cigarettes, and the clerk barely glanced at us, sliding a key across the counter without a word. Inside the dimly lit room, Lauren sank onto the edge of the bed, dropping her bag at her feet. I flipped the deadbolt on the door and drew the flimsy curtains over the single window. The night beyond was mostly quiet, though the occasional wail of a siren broke through the silence. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of everything that had happened hung thick in the air. I walked over and took a seat next to her, leaving a careful few inches between us. Despite my lingering wariness, I couldn't deny the magnetic pull she had on me, or the storm of feelings roiling in my chest. At last, I said, I'm going to need more than a vague warning about dangerous people. If I'm involved, I deserve to know what's going on. She looked at me, and under the harsh motel lamp, she appeared more vulnerable than ever. Dark circles under her eyes, her hair tousled from stress and humidity. You're right, she conceded, exhaling. I owe you the truth. She told me what she could, how she worked as a sort of fixer, someone who brokered deals and recovered lost property for high-paying clients. It wasn't always legal, and often, it involved crossing paths with people who could make her life miserable if she failed. The envelope in my tote bag contained documents, hard evidence of a conspiracy that certain powerful individuals were desperate to keep hidden. Whatever's in those papers, Lauren explained, it incriminates people who have more power and money than you can imagine. They'd do anything to get them back. My breath caught. What does that mean for us? Lauren's gaze softened, her fingertips grazing my knee. It means we have to stay a step ahead until I can deliver those documents to someone who can use them against the right targets. Once that happens, maybe I can negotiate some kind of immunity for myself, maybe for both of us. The thought of being on the run with her, someone I'd kissed only once, yet trusted against all logic, made my head spin. There was a part of me that screamed this was insane, that I should call the police or throw the envelope into the nearest trash bin. But the city had always taught me to trust my instincts, and my instincts whispered that Lauren was telling the truth, or at least, as much of it as she could. Okay, I said, surprising myself with my resolve. I'm in. She blinked at me. You're what? In, I repeated, forcing confidence into my voice. You said you needed help, or at least a witness. I might not be an espionage expert, but I'm not letting you do this alone. For a moment, she looked torn between gratitude and guilt. Then she reached over, cupping my jaw in her palm. The warmth of her touch sent a ripple of longing through me. I'm sorry I dragged you into this, she murmured. I leaned forward, brushing my lips against hers. A soft kiss that felt different from the fiery one we'd shared in her loft. This one was laced with fear and caution. Yes, but also an understanding that we were forging a bond beneath dangerous circumstances. When she pulled back, I tasted salt on my tongue. Tears, though I wasn't sure if they were hers or mine. We spent the next few days living in the shadows of the city, carefully avoiding predictable patterns. We hopped from hotel to hotel, sometimes doubling back to check if anyone was following. Lauren's phone rang constantly. Some calls she answered, some she ignored. She was trying to set up a meeting with the right people, those who might leverage the documents for her safety. During those frantic days, a strange intimacy grew between us. We started learning each other's quirks, how I needed coffee to function in the morning, how she hummed show tunes under her breath when she was stressed. We made each other laugh despite the looming danger, swapping stories of places we'd visited and foods we'd hated or loved. For the first time in my life, I found myself drawn not just to the excitement of a fleeting encounter, but to the quiet companionship of simply existing alongside someone else. Yet the pressure never truly dissipated. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, I'd catch a glimpse of fear in Lauren's eyes, and I'd remember that the envelope in my tote bag was the ticking time bomb tying us to a larger conspiracy. I could sense the tension building, day by day. It finally snapped on a muggy evening in the Lower East Side. We were supposed to meet a contact of Lauren's, a journalist who'd agreed to help us blow the lid off whatever scandal the documents contained. It was after midnight when we arrived at the designated spot, a rundown bar with flickering neon lights announcing beer specials. I spotted a single figure slouched in a booth near the back. Lauren paused, scanning the bar's patrons with narrowed eyes. "I don't like this," she whispered. "Feels off." I swallowed. "We can leave." She shook her head. "We need to do this. Stay close to me." Together, we approached the booth. The man sitting there, early 40s maybe, with a scruffy beard and bloodshot eyes, looked up at Lauren with a flicker of recognition. His gaze slid to me, then to the bag on my shoulder. "You have it?" he asked in a gravelly whisper. Lauren nodded, lowering herself onto the bench. I remained standing beside her, anxious to keep an eye on the bar's entrance. He coughed, wrapping his fingers on the table. "We've got to be quick. There's a lot of money at play here and a lot of people who don't want this story out." She nodded, throwing a cautious glance over her shoulder. "I just need your guarantee that once you publish, you'll protect me and Olivia. You have the resources to do that." The man pursed his lips, shifting uncomfortably. "I can try, but these people have friends in high places, judges, politicians, law enforcement. I can't promise total safety." Before Lauren could respond, the door to the bar swung open with a thud. Two men in dark suits stepped inside, scanning the patrons with hawkish intensity. The moment their gaze locked on us, alarm bells screamed in my head. "That's them," Lauren hissed. Without warning, one of the men reached inside his jacket. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a hit. We'd been made. "Get down!" Lauren yelled. She grabbed my arm, shoving me under the table as a loud pop cracked through the bar, followed by shouts and the shattering of glass. I hit the floor, adrenaline surging so fiercely I thought my heart would burst. The journalist dove for cover, cursing a blue streak as he tried to shield his head. Patrons screamed, ducking behind the bar or scrambling toward the bathrooms. My mind buzzed with terror. I reached for Lauren, my fingers closing around the cuff of her sleeve. "We have to get out of here," I cried. She jerked her head in a nod, eyes blazing with resolve. The men advanced through the bar, overturning stools as they fired another round. Bullets splintered wood and sent shards of glass flying. I winced when a piece nicked my arm, but I had no time to dwell on the pain. Lauren grabbed my hand and yanked me to my feet. We darted sideways out of the booth, crouching low as we raced for the back door. The smell of gunpowder and fear choked the air. My heart pounded so loudly that every other sound faded into the background. At the exit, the door slammed open with a rusty squeak. We burst into the alley, the distant hum of traffic offering no comfort. Footsteps echoed behind us. Our pursuers wouldn't give up easily. Lauren and I sprinted, weaving through the maze of garbage bins and broken crates, the envelope still strapped to my side. A fence loomed at the end of the alley. Without pausing, Lauren scaled it with a lithe grace that left me breathless. She reached down, helping pull me up. My foot slipped on the chain links, and for a horrifying second, I thought I'd plummet backwards into the alley. But Lauren's grip was strong, and she hauled me over. We landed hard on the other side, rolling across the pavement. My lungs burned, but we kept running until we reached a busier street. Headlights swarmed us, and neon signs glared overhead. blessedly public. The men chasing us wouldn't risk a shootout here, or so I hoped. Lauren flagged down a taxi, practically throwing me into the back seat before climbing in after me. "Drive!" she shouted at the startled driver. "Just go!" He hesitated, eyeing our disheveled clothes and frantic expressions. But something in Lauren's tone convinced him. The engine roared to life, carrying us away into the chaotic New York night. We didn't stop until we were across the East River in Williamsburg, holed up in a tiny 24-hour cafe that served mediocre coffee and stale pastries. It was a dive, but we were grateful for the momentary reprieve. Exhausted, we collapsed into a booth. Outside, the drizzle of a light rain tapped against the windows, distorting the neon lights of a nearby liquor store. Lauren clutched her cup of coffee with both hands, staring at the dark liquid as though it might hold some answer. I glanced at my reflection in the greasy window and barely recognized the woman looking back, hair askew, eyes wide with tension, blood drying on a small cut on my arm. My thoughts churned. We were in deep trouble. The documents were still in my bag, meaning those men, and whoever they worked for, would keep chasing us. Part of me wanted to scream at Lauren for dragging me into this nightmare. Another part was already counting the ways we could stay safe, plotting a path out of the city if it came to that. She reached across the table and laid her hand over mine. The warmth of her skin anchored me to the moment, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this swirling chaos. "I'm sorry," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "You should hate me for this." I exhaled a shaky breath, letting out a humorless laugh. "I probably should, huh?" Silence settled between us, thick with unspoken confessions. My mind wandered back to the first time I saw her at the Jane Hotel, the way she seemed to own the room. Even then, she had been haunted by something, carrying secrets that went beyond normal heartbreak or baggage. I'd felt the pull of that mystery and chosen to step closer despite not knowing what it entailed. Now, my life was tangled in hers, bound by more than simple attraction. We were fugitives of a kind, cornered by a power that dwarfed us both. And yet, in the midst of it all, I realized I couldn't bring myself to regret it, because whenever we locked eyes, a spark of understanding passed between us, a promise that we'd face whatever came next, together. Lauren cleared her throat, trying to steady her voice. "So, do we run? Where would we even go?" I asked quietly, staring at the raindrops streaming down the window. She paused, drumming her fingers on the chipped tabletop. "I know a place upstate, someone who might offer us a safe house for a while, at least until I can arrange another meeting. And the envelope?" She shook her head. "We hold on to it. It's our only leverage. Our only leverage." I tasted the word on my tongue. Leverage, blackmail, conspiracy. I was so far out of my comfort zone that it was almost laughable. But when I looked at Lauren, saw the guilt etched into her features, I understood she was trying to protect me. She gave me a grateful smile. "You're either the bravest or the craziest person I've ever met. Maybe both." My lips twitched, a distant echo of the flirty confidence that used to define me. She leaned across the table and kissed me, soft, uncertain, yet filled with a depth of emotion that went beyond mere lust. It was the kiss of two people clinging to each other in a storm, a fragile lifeline in a chaotic world. When we pulled apart, I felt tears prickling at the back of my eyes. The realization that I was truly risking my life for her now settled like a weight in my chest. But that weight was balanced by a fierce, growing determination. Because in the whirlwind nights of the city that never sleeps, I had found something worth fighting for. Someone who made me feel alive in a way I'd never known. We left the cafe soon after, stepping back into the rain-soaked streets of Williamsburg. A broken neon sign buzzed overhead, casting a flickering pink hue across the pavement. The city loomed around us, sprawling and indifferent as always. Yet for the first time, I sensed the peril hidden in its shadows in a more intimate way than ever before. In the old days, danger was a whisper of excitement in a one-night stand or an after-party gone wrong. Now, it was men in suits, guns, and top-secret documents that could start or end wars. But as Lauren and I stood there, clutching each other's hands under a battered awning, I felt something new, hope, a trembling, fragile sense that we might outsmart the forces arrayed against us. That if we could find a moment's rest, a safe haven beyond the city's glare, we could lay out our options and maybe, just maybe, live to see another day, together. I never thought I'd trust anyone enough to run headfirst into uncertainty. Yet here I was, my life in upheaval, my heart straining in ways it never had before. Lauren brushed her thumb over my knuckles, a silent vow of solidarity. Whatever happened next, We'd face it side by side. The night pressed in around us, but for a heartbeat, all I felt was the steady warmth of her presence, the quiet promise in her dark eyes. I drew in a breath, letting the city's pulse merge with my own. This was our new reality, born from a chance encounter and a kiss that electrified my world. And so, we hailed another taxi, heading into the unknown, envelope in tow, hearts pounding in unison. Through the hazy windows, New York's skyline gleamed with a million distant lights, each one a story unfolding in secret. Ours was simply another thread in the grand tapestry of the city, but it was ours, woven with danger and desire. As we sped off, water splashing beneath the tires, I closed my eyes and let my mind drift, holding on to the faint hope that there was a future waiting for us beyond the chaos. Something told me that this was only the beginning, that the real test lay ahead, along a road of shifting alliances, narrow escapes, and secrets that threatened to consume us. But for now, in that fleeting space, I clung to Lauren's hand, determined to see it through. And you? Would you risk everything for someone who might change your life forever?